The morning fog clung to the Moselle River like a shroud, thick and cold in the pre-dawn darkness of November 1944. German Oberleutnant Klaus Richter stood at the observation post overlooking the swollen waters, his breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. Below, the river churned with autumn rains, its current fierce and unforgiving. "They'll never cross here," said Feldwebel Otto Braun, lowering his binoculars. "The engineers said it's suicide. Currents too strong, banks too steep." Richter nodded, studying the terrain. The Moselle had become their natural fortress. Intelligence reports placed American armored units 15 kilometers west, but the river created a barrier that even their vaunted Shermans couldn't overcome. Or so every calculation suggested. "Double the watch anyway," Richter ordered. "Americans are resourceful." Across the river, Captain James Morrison crouched beside his Sherman tank, studying aerial reconnaissance photos under a canvas tarp. Rain drummed against the fabric as his crew gathered close. "Sir, even our engineers think this is crazy," said Sergeant Bill Thompson, his Georgia drawl cutting through the sound of rain. "That current'll sweep anything into the next county." Morrison traced his finger along the photographs. "Look here. This bend creates a natural eddy. Current slows for about 50 yards. It's not much, but it's enough." "Enough for what?" asked Corporal Eddie Martinez, the driver. "We sink, we're dead. Shermans ain't boats." "No," Morrison agreed, "but they can wade deeper than anyone expects. We've got fording equipment, waterproofing kits, and the element of surprise. The Germans think this crossing is impossible. That's exactly why we're doing it." The plan was audacious. 3 Shermans would attempt the crossing at 400 hours, using a combination of fording stacks, extended air intakes, and waterproofing compound to seal vulnerable points. If successful, they'd establish a bridgehead for the infantry. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, the battalion's engineering officer, worked through the night preparing the tanks. He sealed hatches with special compound, extended exhaust pipes, and mounted tall air intake stacks that rose like periscopes above the turrets. "These stacks will let you breathe underwater," Hayes explained to Morrison's crew. "Keep your engine running, move slow and steady. The tank can handle 6 feet of water, maybe 7 if you're lucky. But if water reaches the intake, you're done." "Comforting," muttered Martinez. By 0330 hours, the 3 Shermans sat idling at the riverbank, their crews performing final checks. Morrison's tank would lead, followed by Lieutenant David Chen's and Lieutenant Frank Weber's machines. Each carried extra ammunition and supplies for the infantry that would follow if, when, they succeeded. Morrison climbed into his commander's position, rain streaming down his face. Through his periscope, he could barely see the opposite shore, just a dark mass beyond churning water. "All tanks, radio check," he called. "Chen here, ready. Weber, good to go." "Then let's make history," Morrison said quietly. At precisely 0400 hours, Morrison's Sherman lurched forward, tracks biting into mud as it descended the steep bank. The moment the tank entered the water, the current hit like a freight train. Martinez fought the controls, applying power to keep the 30-ton machine moving forward rather than sideways. Water rose rapidly over the hull, reaching the turret ring. Inside, the crew heard the river's roar become muffled as water surrounded them. The tank's interior grew humid, condensation forming on metal surfaces. "Steady," Morrison commanded, watching the tall intake stack cut through the water like a snorkel. "Maintain heading 270. The current pushed relentlessly against the Sherman's side. Martinez compensated, angling slightly upstream, using techniques he'd learned fording rivers back in Louisiana. The tank crept forward, tracks finding purchase on the rocky riverbed. "Depth increasing," called Gunner Sergeant Paul Rodriguez. "We're in deep." The water reached 7 feet. Inside, the crew felt the tank shift as buoyancy partially lifted the hull. For a terrifying moment, they were more floating than driving, at the mercy of the current. "More power," Morrison ordered. "Push through." Martinez opened the throttle. The Ford GAA engine roared, tracks churning. Slowly, grudgingly, the Sherman forced its way through the deepest part of the channel. On the German side, A young sentry named Private Hans Decker heard an odd sound over the river's rush, a mechanical growl, rhythmic and persistent. He raised his rifle, peering into darkness. "Feldwebel," he called. "Something's in the water." Braun grabbed binoculars, scanning. At first, he saw nothing. Then, impossibly, a tall pipe broke the surface, moving steadily toward their shore. Behind it, a dark mass resolved into the unmistakable silhouette of a tank turret. "Alarm!" Braun shouted. "Tanks crossing the river! Americans crossing!" Richter rushed to the position, unable to believe his eyes. 3 Shermans were emerging from the Moselle like primordial beasts, water cascading from their hulls. The lead tank's tracks found the opposite bank, pulling the machine up the steep incline. "Impossible," Richter breathed. "The current, the depth. It's impossible." But impossible or not, Morrison's Sherman cleared the water, and its 75mm gun was already traversing toward German positions. "All tanks, we're across," Morrison transmitted. "Form defensive perimeter. Infantry, you're clear to cross." Behind them, American engineers were already moving pontoon sections into position, using the tank's success to inspire their own courage. If Shermans could cross, so could they. Chapter 2. Disbelief and Response. Dawn broke over the Moselle to reveal a scene that defied German defensive doctrine. 3 American Sherman tanks sat in a triangular formation on the eastern bank, their crews working frantically to clear water from systems and prepare for combat. Behind them, American engineers constructed a pontoon bridge with astonishing speed. Oberleutnant Richter stood in the command bunker, telephone pressed to his ear, trying to explain the inexplicable to his regimental commander. "Herr Mayer, I am telling you the truth. 3 enemy tanks crossed the Moselle during the night, yes sir, through 7 feet of water. The current, yes sir, I know what the engineers said. I'm looking at them right now." The voice on the other end crackled with disbelief and anger. Richter held the phone away from his ear slightly as his superior demanded explanations he couldn't provide. "They used extended pipes, Herr Major, like breathing tubes. We've never seen anything like it. They're establishing a bridgehead. Infantry is beginning to cross now." When Richter finally hung up, his hand trembled slightly. Braun watched him with concerned eyes. "Orders?" the Feldwebel asked. "Counterattack," Richter said flatly. "We're to eliminate the bridgehead immediately. We have 2 Panzerwaffen in reserve 3 kilometers east. They're moving up now." Across the river, Morrison stood atop his Sherman, surveying their precarious position through binoculars. They'd achieved surprise, but now they were exposed, outnumbered, and cut off except for the partially completed bridge. "Jerry's going to hit us hard," Thompson observed, checking ammunition counts. "We got maybe 30 rounds of 75mm, half that in AP." "Then we make every shot count," Morrison replied. He'd studied German tank doctrine extensively. They'd come straight down the main road, textbook assault. The question was when. Lieutenant Chen approached, his uniform still damp. "My radio took water. It's dead. I can't communicate with battalion." Morrison cursed softly. 1 tank out of communication meant coordinating their defense would be harder. "Stay within visual range. Watch for my signals." The sound of tracked vehicles reached them before visual contact, a distinctive rumble of German armor. Morrison dropped into his commander's position. Enemy armor approaching from the east. Load AP. Range approximately 1,200 yards. Rodriguez trained the gun toward the sound. Through morning mist, 2 Panzerwaffen appeared, moving in tandem down the road. Their commanders stood in their cupolas, scanning for targets. "I see them," Rodriguez confirmed. "Target left, Panzerwaffen. Fire when ready." The Sherman's 75mm gun barked, recoil rocking the tank. The armor-piercing round streaked downrange, striking the lead Panzer's glacis plate at an angle. The round deflected harmlessly, sparking off armor. "Damn," Rodriguez muttered. "Angle's too steep." The German tanks returned fire. An 88mm round shrieked past Morrison's turret, missing by inches. The concussion wave rattled his teeth. "Traverse right," Morrison commanded, voice steady despite his racing heart. "Hit the track." Rodriguez adjusted, fired again. This time the round struck true, shattering the Panzer's right track. The German tank lurched to a halt, crew bailing out as smoke poured from the engine compartment. The second Panzer accelerated, trying to flank. But Lieutenant Weber's Sherman, positioned on the perimeter's right, caught it in profile. Weber's gunner didn't miss. The round penetrated the side armor, detonating ammunition inside. The Panzer exploded, turret lifting completely off the hull. Richter watched through binoculars, his strategic mind racing. The Americans had positioned their tanks brilliantly, creating overlapping fields of fire, and they destroyed 2 of his Panzers in less than 3 minutes. The bridge, Braun said suddenly. If we destroy the bridge, they're trapped. We can contain them. Richter considered this. Bring up the Nebelwerfer. Target the pontoon bridge. If we can't push them back, we'll cut them off. The distinctive screaming rocket launchers moved into position, their crews working with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, they opened fire. Rockets shrieked toward the half-completed bridge, trailing smoke. Morrison saw the launch, recognized the sound immediately. Incoming! Nebelwerfer! The rockets impacted around the bridge, throwing up massive columns of water and debris. 2 pontoon sections disintegrated. American engineers dove for cover as shrapnel whined through the air. Captain Sarah Mitchell, the engineering company commander, assessed the damage with a sinking feeling. We've lost 20 feet of bridge. It'll take hours to repair under fire. She radioed Morrison. Bridgehead, this is Engineer 6. Bridge is damaged. You're on your own for now. Morrison acknowledged, then gathered his crew. Gentlemen, we're cut off. We hold this position until the bridge is repaired or we're relieved. No retreat. Wouldn't dream of it, sir, Thompson said with a grim smile. We crossed an impassable river. We can handle whatever Jerry throws at us. Chapter 3. The Long Defense. The sun climbed higher, burning off morning mist and revealing the full tactical situation. Morrison's 3 Shermans occupied a rough triangle on the eastern bank, surrounded by hastily dug infantry foxholes. American soldiers who'd crossed before the bridge was damaged now shared the isolated bridgehead, perhaps 200 men total. Across open ground, German forces gathered strength. Richter had been reinforced with infantry, anti-tank guns, and the promise of more armor by afternoon. His orders were clear: eliminate the bridgehead. But something gnawed at Richter's professional military mind. These Americans had done the impossible. They'd crossed a river his own engineers deemed impassable, using ingenuity and courage that demanded respect, even from an enemy. They're stubborn, Braun observed, watching the Americans strengthen their position. They know we're coming. They're more than stubborn, Richter replied. They're skilled. Notice how they've positioned those tanks? Each covers the others. Infantry is integrated perfectly. Whoever commands that bridgehead knows his business. At 1100 hours, Richter launched his assault. German infantry advanced in sections, covered by machine gun fire. Anti-tank guns engaged the Shermans from concealed positions. Morrison's tank rocked as an 88mm round struck the front armor. The round penetrated part way, then lodged. Inside, the crew felt the impact like a hammer blow. Damage report, Morrison shouted. Hull's cracked but holding, Martinez called back. We're still mobile. Rodriguez returned fire, destroying the anti-tank gun in a shower of earth and metal. But 2 more guns opened up, bracketing the Sherman with near misses. The battle became a desperate mathematics of ammunition and positioning. Each shot had to count. Each movement risked exposure. The Americans fought with the precision of men who knew survival depended on discipline. Lieutenant Chen's tank, still without radio, maneuvered based on visual signals from Morrison. When German infantry tried to infiltrate from the north, Chen's machine gun cut them down. When a Panzer Schreck team crept close, American infantry spotted them and called artillery that scattered the threat. Hours passed. The bridgehead held, but ammunition dwindled. Morrison counted rounds constantly, 23 75mm shells remaining. Then 20. Then 15. We're going to run dry, Thompson said quietly. What then? Morrison had no answer. Across the river, engineers worked frantically to repair the bridge under sporadic artillery fire. But the work was slow, dangerous, and far from complete. At 1400 hours, a German officer approached under a white flag. Morrison met him at the perimeter, curious despite the tactical situation. The German officer saluted crisply. Richter studied the American tank commander with professional interest. "I am Oberleutnant Klaus Richter. You and your men have fought well, but you are cut off, low on ammunition, and reinforcement is impossible. I offer honorable surrender." Morrison returned the salute. "Captain James Morrison, I appreciate the offer, Oberleutnant, but we're not done yet." "Captain, I watched your tanks cross that river," Richter said, voice carrying genuine admiration. "It was remarkable. But this position is untenable. More of my men are coming. You've made your point. There's no shame in surrender now." Morrison considered the German officer. In another time, another place, they might have been colleagues. Sharing technical discussions over coffee, war made enemies of men who should have been friends. "My orders are to hold this bridgehead," Morrison said simply. "Those orders haven't changed." Richter nodded slowly, understanding. "Then I regret what must happen next. You are a worthy opponent, Captain. I wish we'd met under different circumstances." "As do I, Oberleutnant, as do I." The officers saluted again. Richter walked back to his lines, already planning his next assault. But something had changed in his thinking. These Americans weren't just enemies to be destroyed. They were soldiers like himself, doing impossible things because duty demanded it. As Richter reached his command post, Braun reported, 3 more Panzer IVs arriving within the hour, additional infantry company as well. Richter stared across at the American position. "Prepare the assault, but Braun, when they surrender, and they will, they are to be treated with respect. These are brave men." "Jawohl, Herr Oberleutnant." Chapter 4. Resolution and Respect. The afternoon sun slanted low, casting long shadows across the battlefield. In the American bridgehead, Morrison gathered his officers and senior NCOs. Their situation was deteriorating rapidly. "We're down to 8 rounds of 75 mm, he reported. "Small arms ammunition is better, but not by much. The bridge won't be repaired before nightfall." Lieutenant Weber spoke up. "Sir, we could try to withdraw. Cross back at night." Morrison shook his head. "We'd lose half our men in the current, and we'd give up everything we've gained. This bridgehead is worth holding." "Even if it costs us everything?" Weber asked quietly. "Especially then," Morrison replied. "Because what we did here, crossing that river, holding this ground, proves something. It proves that impossible is just a word. That courage and ingenuity matter. Future operations will learn from this. That's worth the cost." Across the lines, Richter prepared his final assault. 3 Panzer IVs sat in concealment, engines idling. 2 full companies of infantry waited for the order. He had overwhelming force. The Americans had courage. But as Richter studied the bridgehead through binoculars, something made him pause. Movement on the western bank. American engineers still working despite artillery fire. And beyond them, more movement. Much more. "Herr Oberleutnant?" His radio operator called urgently. "Reconnaissance reports American armor column approaching from the west. Multiple tanks, perhaps a full company." Richter's tactical mind processed this instantly. The Americans had used their bridgehead to buy time. While Morrison held the eastern bank, reinforcements massed on the west. And now, with daylight fading, those reinforcements were moving. The strategic calculation changed. He could destroy Morrison's bridgehead, but at what cost? His forces would be exposed, depleted, and facing fresh American armor. The sensible military decision was to withdraw to prepared positions. Richter made his choice. All units break contact, fall back to the secondary defensive line. Fighting withdrawal, maintain good order. Braun stared at him. "Sir? We have them trapped." "No," Richter said thoughtfully. "They trapped us. They made us commit forces here while their main strength gathered elsewhere. That American captain. He understood that his mission wasn't to survive. It was to fix our attention. and he succeeded brilliantly. As German forces withdrew, Morrison watched through his periscope, hardly believing what he saw. "They're pulling back." "Why?" Thompson pointed west. "Look, sir, our cavalry's arrived." Across the repaired sections of bridge, American Shermans rolled, one after another. A full tank company followed by infantry, artillery, and supply trucks. The bridgehead Morrison had held at such cost became the gateway for an entire division. By nightfall, American forces controlled both banks of the Moselle. Engineers worked under floodlights, strengthening the bridge into a permanent crossing point. The impossible crossing had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Morrison climbed stiffly from his tank, every muscle aching. His crew gathered around, faces blackened by smoke, eyes red with exhaustion. "We did it," Martinez said, voice filled with wonder. "We actually did it." "Never doubted it for a second," Thompson lied cheerfully. Rodriguez patted the Sherman's scarred hull. "This girl crossed a river Germans said was impossible, then held off everything they threw at us. I'm naming her Impassable Dream." Morrison smiled tiredly. "Good name. She earned it." 3 days later, Morrison received orders to report to division headquarters. He found himself facing Major General William Bradford, who studied him with keen interest. "Captain, your after-action report makes fascinating reading," Bradford said. "Fording the Moselle, holding an isolated bridgehead for 6 hours, destroying 4 German tanks, quite remarkable." "My men deserve the credit, sir. I just pointed the direction." Bradford smiled slightly. "Modest, too. Captain, do you know why this operation matters beyond the tactical gains?" Morrison shook his head. "Because you proved something crucial," Bradford explained. "You proved that rivers the enemy considers impassable aren't. That surprise and ingenuity can overcome superior defensive positions. Your crossing will be studied, replicated, improved upon. You've changed how we think about water obstacles." He paused, then added, "There's something else. We intercepted German radio traffic. Their commander, Oberleutnant Richter, filed his own report. He called your crossing militarily brilliant and your defense exemplary. He recommended you and your men be accorded full military honors if captured. That's rare, Captain. Very rare." Morrison thought about his brief meeting with Richter under the white flag. 2 professional soldiers recognizing in each other the same dedication, the same courage, trapped on opposite sides of history. "He was a good officer, sir, under different circumstances." "I know," Bradford said quietly. "War makes enemies of men who should be brothers in arms, but it also reveals character, both yours and his. You're hereby awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Your crew will receive silver stars." 6 months later, after Germany's surrender, Morrison received a letter forwarded through Red Cross channels. It was from Klaus Richter, now in a POW camp in England. "Dear Captain Morrison," it read, "I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to tell you that your crossing of the Moselle remains the most impressive tactical operation I witnessed during the war. You and your men achieved the impossible through courage, skill, and determination. These are qualities that transcend nationality. I am told the bridge you secured helped shorten the war by weeks, perhaps months. If so, you saved countless lives on both sides. For that, this former enemy thanks you. After my release, perhaps we might meet again, this time as the colleagues we should always have been. With respect, Klaus Richter, Oberleutnant." Morrison read the letter twice, then carefully folded it into his uniform pocket. The impossible crossing had taught him many lessons, about engineering, tactics, and courage, but the most important lesson was about humanity, that even in war's darkest moments, respect and honor could bridge divides deeper than any river. The Sherman tank Impassable Dream was eventually retired to a military museum, where a plaque told the story of its crossing. Visitors read how 3 tanks achieved the impossible on a cold November morning in 1944, and how that achievement changed the course of the war. But for Morrison, Thompson, Martinez, Rodriguez, and the others who were there, the real story was simpler. Sometimes impossible is just another word for not yet attempted. Sometimes all it takes is courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to try when everyone says it can't be done. The Moselle crossing proved that walls and barriers, Whether rivers, expectations, or limitations exist only until someone decides to cross them. And once crossed, they're never impossible again.